Willkommen zurück bei A Hand in the Darkness und willkommen zurück bei der einen Entscheidung, die wir getroffen haben, die anscheinend total falsch war, nachdem wir tot sind. Versuche ich jetzt einfach die andere Möglichkeit. Vielleicht bekommen wir ein schönes Ende und sterben nicht innerhalb von den nächsten 5 Minuten. Deshalb würde ich sagen, try to reason with Monty, um das Ganze aus der Welt zu schaffen und warum er sich so arschig verhält. I didn't want to leave feeling that angry and frustrated. I turned around and faced Monty once more. Honestly, how can you say those things after what we shared the other day? Did it mean nothing to you? Monty replied, staring stubbornly at the wall. Perhaps you would have preferred to share that with Damien too. That was the last straw that breaks the camel. Twisting my hands, I lowered my voice to a raspy mumble. I would never do that with anyone else than you, but if that's what you choose to think, then I don't know what the hell we are doing together. He closed his eyes tightly and my words sightened and rubbed his brow. Alex, that's not what I think. I was only being mean. That you were, I can swear. He hid his face on his hands. His ears, the only visible part of his face right then, were as red as his hair. I sighed in annoyance and stepped closer to him. Why do you react like this? Have I given you any reason to distrust me? He shook his head in a negative answer. I got he was ashamed now, as he should be, but it made me feel still more frustrated than before. Then why? If we trust each other enough to share our bodies, then we should trust each other to explain what bothers us. Why do you get jealous, Monty? I need to understand. I need a reason. There isn't any. He moved his hands off his face, trembling and red. I don't have any reason, got it? I don't know why it happens. I just can't control it. I cast him a sad look. You will have to try if you want us to keep being together. He wiped a still unshed tear with a forearm and nodded. I will, Alex. You are important to me. Do you believe it, right? I nodded and sat by his side on the bed, his arms wrapped around my torso at once. I'm so sorry. I'm a horrible person. I took his chin with care and gave him a short peck. We stared into each other's eyes for a long, silent moment. We hugged again, my heart aching with a slow burn. I wish I could say something reassuring to him, but my thoughts were a mess right then. We will sort this out, together. He smiled shyly, still short of his usual self and his bright smiles that I loved so much, but something was something. I should really go now. Please get up and go to the library at once. I will, please, Alex. I stopped again by the door, this time with a little smile of relief. Yes. Be very, very careful. I gulped and my smile fell shattered in pieces by dread and anticipation. Damien was already tapping on the floor with his foot, throwing with impatient. About time. What took you so long? I was tempted to go with you. I'm dying for a smoke. I apologized and followed him out the building. The day was cold, but the wind seemed to quiet inside the woods. Autumn was already there, and if I hadn't been freezing and worried, I would certainly enjoy a stroll through the piles of dry leaves and the golden sailing of the trees above us. Damien slowed down as soon as we lost sight of the main building. He took a cigarette and a lighter off his jacket's pocket and lit it, closing his eyes in pleasure. Oh, so good. Would you like one, little bird? I shook my head as an answer and huddled in my jacket. I was glad I was wearing my scarf, but I would have been still gladder if I had also my coat with me. Okay, the garden's cabin is at the other side of the woods, to the east. Let's go. He started to walk again, not too fast, as if this was just a pleasurable Sunday stroll. Well, it was in a way, right? I tried to enjoy the fresh air. After all, I spent almost all the time during the week inside four walls, so being outside felt really good. We walked in silence for about 5 minutes, and then he stopped. I swept our surroundings, my gaze. If there was a cabin around, I couldn't see it. Where is it? We're not there yet. It's about 5 minutes more walking from here. Oh, I see. Then why are we stopping? Did he want to show me something? I studied the trees around us, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Damien grinned at my words and leaned against the trunk of a tree. I just thought we could take a little rest. Besides, perhaps it's time to claim my compensation for helping you. I didn't like how that sounded. I didn't know what he had in mind, but after that kiss he practically stole from me, I had the hunch that I wouldn't like whatever he asked for. Before I could think of a polite way to tie him, Damien grabbed my wrist and pulled me practically into his arms. Then I felt his lips on mine, warm and supple, while his arms closed around me. I moved away almost at once, startled, but he didn't let me go, and instead he offered me a lopsided grin and asked me, "Tell me, do you remember where did we leave it the other time, And he pulled me again towards him, pressing a hand against my neck until our lips crashed in an indelicate manner. Enraged, I stepped back and gave him a shove, freeing myself from his arms. "What the hell are you doing?" "Having a bit fun." "Well, that's not fun for me. Look, if you want a compensation, we will look into it together, but you must stop jumping me for fun." He grunted and avoided my eyes. How boring. And here I thought you had enjoyed the other time. That's not it." He stared at me with interest again. "Then, what's the issue?" It was my turn of looking at everywhere except at Damien. "Well, we don't even like each other, for instance. Not that way." He frowned and looked at me through squinted eyes. "You're as dull as the rest in the end. How disappointing." He sighed and looked around while he took another cigarette out his pocket. "Okay, then, if that's how things are, let's get done with this as soon as possible. Come on, let's find that cabin." He started walking again, this time at a fast pace, and I had to hurry to keep up with his long strides. "I get you won't tell anybody, right? I have a reputation with the ladies that I wouldn't like to shatter." I raised my eyebrows and shook my head in disbelief, but I told him that I would remain silent, of course. There was no way in hell I was going through the shame of talking about that with anybody, especially since it could reach Monty's ears. We arrived to a narrow clearing in the woods, and I didn't need Damien pointing it to me to know we had reached the place. In the side of the clearing there was a small edification all in rough wood, very similar to one of our local gamekeeper near my village. "So here's where that man hides." It seems so far. I have only seen him once inside St. Michael's, and that was during the first week. We were speaking in whispers, curious. I walked around the edges of the clearing and get closer to the cabin. Damien followed me. His name is Jonathan Bolton, but I haven't managed to find out anything else about him. Not where he comes from, nor where he has served before, nothing. Nobody seems to have spoken to him more than a couple of words. Interesting. I went as close as the cabin as I could go with the vegetation still hiding me. I tried to peer through the only window, but there wasn't any light inside. Perhaps he was working despite being Sunday, or perhaps he had gone to town. I stepped forward, determined to knock on the door if necessary, but Damien grabbed my forearm and pulled me back again. "What are you doing? Haven't you listened to me? This is not the kind of man you can approach and say, 'Oh, excuse me, I was picking up mushrooms and I got lost.' But I won't see him if I stay hidden here. Let's wait a little. Have a bit of patience, will you? If he doesn't go out in, say, half an hour, then we go closer and peer through the window and check if there's someone inside or not." I grunted, not very happy with the prospect. We sat on the ground, and Damien was about to take another cigarette out when he decided against it and tucked it in his pocket. The smoke would give us away. He made an unhappy face at the realization, and I had a grin behind my hand. It served him well. 10 minutes later, the wooden door swung open, and a big, broad-chested man went out and walked around the cabin to the cold opposite with a bucket in his hand. He took the shovel and proceeded to fill the bucket with coal. I sat up on my knees and studied the man. He was around 40, dark-haired, and had a coarse short beard and a strong air. Even with his body covered by a cape, I could imagine easily wiring muscles tensing with every showful of coal. I focused on the parts of his face I could see. His eyes were half in shadow, but his nose and his lips. The gardener was gone in a blink of an eye, shutting himself inside the cabin once his task was done. Damien turned to look at me with one of his eyebrows raised. Well? I stood up and started walking back to the school, thinking hard. Damien followed suit and keep my same pace. He's not the person who attacked me in the stairs. And the other the man in the mask? I shook my head in frustration. I can't be sure. He wasn't wearing a beard. The lips couldn't be his, but I can't be 100% sure. He half annoyed. So nothing we could go to the police with. I see. Now, what if he is innocent and I hand him to the police? I would never forgive myself if that was the case. Yeah, I understand. We strolled in silence for a while, the two of us deep in thought, considering our options. Then there's just Andrew left. If he isn't our man, we will have nothing. I sighed. What do I do in that case? He looked at me with concern and a bit of pity. In that case, you should tell your parents and leave St. Michael's. Sorry, Alex, but that would be the safest thing to do. You're already risking your life too much staying. This can't go on indefinitely. The thought of Monty and our time in the bathroom crossed my mind with a pang of sadness. Hey, what about you all said about being by my side and keeping an eye on me? That will do, of course, but it's too much responsibility for us. Imagine one of us get distracted and loses sight of you for a moment, and right then you are murdered. You can tell how the poor sod would feel for the rest of his life. I nodded. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't thought of 100 of things, it seemed. Perhaps I should follow Damien's advice and give up. I would be safe and sound at home, and I could always finish the school year at my local old school. I fisted my hands, thinking of all the things that I would have to leave behind if I did that. Monty, my new friends, all my efforts studying so hard, Cambridge or Oxford. Monty. Damien took me out of my reverie with a hand on my shoulder and a dramatic sigh. Stop it, all right. First we must check on Andrew. Don't throw the towel in just yet. You're right. Come on, I have tons of work in the library. The next day was Monday, and Rick and I went to watch Monty's cricket practice at my suggestion. Monty was really bad at it, but he was improving slowly, and the captain wanted to make him play on the next Saturday's match. Monty was excited but terrified, and I knew it. And I knew it would make him happy seeing me there cheering him up. The practice was boring as I expected, but at the end Monty made some good passes at least. I stood up and cheered him loudly. Afterwards he came and hugged me in front of everybody. I blushed, and Rick by my side too, by sympathy, but it made me very happy seeing Monty so cheerful. Have you seen that? Didn't I tell you? I will be the best player in the team before the school finishes. Rick pushed up his glasses and caught it. You better put that into enthusiasm in your studies. Your grade in the midterms were just so especially compared to the ones you used to have last term. Monty glared at him without letting me go. I started to be too aware of how our mates stared at us. Oh, shut up! My grades are okay. I can cope with the cricket training and my school task. Thank you very much. You make sure Alex passes everything at the next exams. I disentangled myself from Monty's arms, embarrassed. Hey, let me out of this, will you? He's working hard, so of course he will. At this rate, he will have better grades than you. We were walking towards the hall by then, but Monty suddenly stopped, appalled. Are you serious? I mean, I'd be happy if Alex has good grades, but I have always been above average. Do you really think I'm that behind? Rick kept walking and replied Monty, looking back at him over his shoulder. As I said, at this rate, Alex would end up in Cambridge and you and some third-rate university. Monty reacted and ran to reach us. Oi! That won't happen, you hear me? Rick and I shared an amused look and ignored Monty, who was swearing he was going to cram like mad from then on until he calmed down a minute later. It was true that I was studying hard. However, those days I was too distracted mulling over Damien's words to focus on my subjects. Was he right and I was being selfish, forcing my friends to look over me? Then, thought of having to come back to my village was depressing, but if in the end it was the only option, I should get used to the idea. Rick glared at me when I sighed loudly for the third time. Okay, I get it. Don't look at me that way. I'm going for a stroll. I need a bit of fresh air. Rick pulled a face. Wait, you shouldn't wander around on your own. Why don't you ask someone to go with you? I looked around. I wasn't particularly acquainted with any of the classmates who were in the study room right then. Come with me. We can pay a visit to Monty and watch his training for 5 minutes. Surprisingly, he hesitated. No, I think it's better if you go with someone else. What are you saying? Come with me, come on. You haven't had a break in 2 hours. Shh, keep your voice quiet. I'm telling you to ask another person. I huffed in fake annoyance and then got up and went to the door. You're no fun. All right, I'll go on my own. Alex, wait. As I knew it would happen, Rick hurried to join me in the corridor, where I welcomed him with a smirk. He really needed a break as well. Being shut between 4 walls all the time wasn't healthy at all. I was glad I had convinced Rick to go out. And strolling with him was more entertaining than going on my own, that was clear. He seemed relaxed and quite happy until we arrived at the cricket pitch. I spotted Monty's mop of red hair at once, and I waved at him with a bright smile. I almost missed the way Rick tensed by my side. I only noticed it when my boyfriend turned his face at hearing me and saw us. His reaction was an icy glare. Rick stopped in his tracks and told me with a thread of voice, I should get going back. Tell Monty to walk back with you to the study room. That reaction took me by surprise. Hold on, Rick! I clasped his elbow, but he started walking fast, leaving me there. Monty kept staring with a blank face, unsure about what I should do. I sat down on the ground and watched the training for a short while until it took a break. My boyfriend ran towards me as soon as he was free. He looked as cheerful and cute as always. I smiled back at him and got up on my feet, but I felt a strange feeling in my gut. Alex, you came to see me. Thank you. I needed a bit of air. My head was aching after so much study. Ha, no wonder. Do you want to take a short walk? Yes, in fact, I should go back to the study room. He made a sad face. Already? Then I will go with you. You shouldn't walk by the school on your own. That's what Rick said. That's why he came with me down to here. His face turned serious again, which I didn't like. We strolled about in silence for a long moment. And who are you studying with? Only with Rick? I nodded. Yes, I'm advising a lot thanks to him. Yeah, I know, but perhaps you should team up with other classmates. Edward is very clever too. I'm sure he would teach you if you ask him. Well, he hasn't volunteered, has he? And I already have Rick for that. He's a really good guy. Anyway, I don't think you should spend so much time with him. Don't you find him boring? No, he's kind and polite and quite talkative sometimes when he gets to know you. But you shouldn't limit yourself to him. I don't like it when you spend time alone with him. I stopped walking. I had a sudden hunch, one that I didn't like at all. Also, I remembered what Rick had told me about the previous roommate, Paul, and how Monty had pushed his other friends away. Monty, you haven't talked with Rick about me, have you? I mean, you told him to stay away from me. Monty hesitated and in the end just looked away. Oh man. So this explained why Rick didn't want to go for a walk with me. What the hell? Had Monty been threatening Rick or what? Of the previous week, I felt sad at Monty's sudden jealousy outburst. Now I felt a mix between anger and disappointment. He told me he would try, and now this? So soon? And even mixing poor Rick, who was nothing but a great friend for the two of us? Ich hab grad echt Angst, wenn ich enough is enough tippe, dass wieder stirbt. Ah, Kacke. Mir geht der total auf den Sack mit seiner Eifersucht, leider. Deswegen würde ich schon wieder einfach aus Prinzip Enough is Enough tippen, aber ich habe echt Angst, dass wir danach wieder sterben. Aber das kann doch nicht sein, dass er da ständig mit seiner blöden Eifersucht um die Ecke kommt und uns damit so auf den Sack geht. Ach komm, ich speichere einfach nachher kurz, damit wir, falls wir tatsächlich sterben, da wieder weitermachen können und klicke jetzt einfach auf Enough is Enough. So. Gespeichert ist, also wir hoffen das Beste. I clenched my fist and felt my anger pumping loudly on my temples. To think I was making such great efforts with my studies and the goal of attending the same university as Monty as main spore. But at that very moment all I could think about was that I was wrong from the start, and it wasn't worth it, not for Monty in any case. I wouldn't try to stay in St. Marcos for myself, for my future and for my friends, of course. However, it was clear as daylight that I needed to stop Monty's paranoid behavior. Monty, I'm sorry to say that, but I think we need to give us some space. What do you mean? You told me you would try to stop with this stupid, unfounded jealousy, and I wanted to believe in you, but now it seems all this time you have been bullying Rick. I wasn't bullying him. Telling my friend he's not allowed to go on a stroll alone with me? Monty, what's wrong with you? Why would you involve other persons in our relationship? Monty looked away, too embarrassed to meet my eyes. He shook his head, but said nothing. Look, I care for you, and I know you care for me in your own way, but I don't think this relationship is doing us any good. His head snapped up to stare at me with surprise. What? My anger had solved and my resolution was crumbling, but I didn't want to back out now that I had made up my mind. What you hear? It's better for the two of us if we break up now. No way! Please, Alex! I will apologize to Rick right now. I promise. I won't get jealous again. And then what? Until the next time? Perhaps next week? Or the one after that? I have given you many chances, but I don't want this anymore. I'm sorry, Monty. I ran away from him. We were already in front of the main door, so I crossed the hall and ran up the main stairs, not stopping until I reached our study room. Once there, I stood by the door, breathless. I knew Monty wouldn't dare to chase me inside where some of our classmates were working in silence, so right then it was my refuge. I closed the door behind me without looking back. I couldn't even see Rick or where our table was through my tears. The next week, I regretted my decision more than 100 times. I couldn't take Monty off my mind every little insignificant moment we had shared during the last month. I felt a constant weight in the pit of my stomach and a raw ache inside my chest. It wasn't exactly sadness or anger. No, it felt more like disappointment. As if something that was previously warming my heart and filling my soul had been suddenly snatched from me. Mr. White, if you would be so kind as to get back to Earth, perhaps you could answer question 3 of the exercise book, please? I realized I had been lost in reverie in the middle of class. I blushed and tried to find exercises, dropping my pen and my textbook to the floor at the attempt. My classmate laughed at me, not very discreetly, and I glanced back at Monty while trying to arrange my school stuff again. My ears felt hot with embarrassment. Monty looked away, deadly serious. Mr. White, please. Yes, sorry, sir. I have to answer now. Rick offered me a sympathetic smile by my side. Well, something was something. Monty was basically avoiding me. Of course, we were still speaking terms, but he spoke to me only when it was strictly necessary. Rick blessed his kind soul, said nothing about the issue, but was a constant reassuring presence. Damien, on the other hand, was as straightforward as always. Hey, have you two of you had an argument or what? I was so flustered I couldn't find my words and restored to keep eating my toast with a trembling hand. By my side, Monty blushed and whispered, Shut up, Damien. Rick caught and Damien raised one eyebrow in surprise. All right. But in fact, I wanted to ask Alex to take a little excursion to the third floor one of these days so we could check on Andrew and see if he's the one who attacked Alex. Oh. God, I had been so distressed during all the previous week that I had almost forgot we had talked about doing that. I sighed, annoyed by myself. Yes, of course. What do you think about going today after class? We have to hand in that Latin translation tomorrow, Alex. Tomorrow then? The sooner the better. I agree, yes. Let's finish this within the week. I wasn't that eager, to be honest. If Andrew wasn't our man, it would mean going back home. Goodbye to St. Andrews. St. Michael's. I glanced at Monty. He didn't look back at me, although I knew he was feeling my eyes set on him, but it didn't matter. We would never go back to what we had, so in a way, perhaps I would feel better if we went back home. No, that would be a waste of all my efforts. I would stay at St. Michael's. I would prove my parents that I wasn't a child anymore. I would show my classmates that I could do as well as them with my effort. I swelled with pride and nodded at Damien and Rick, who smiled back at me. That same afternoon, when our lessons finished, we went back to our bedroom to rest for a moment before meeting at the study room. Oh crap, I have forgotten my Latin dictionary at the classroom. I looked around. Monty was the only friend in sight. Damien was in the bathroom and Rick was already inside the study room. I didn't want to ask Monty to accompany me back to our classroom. I still felt too awkward around him. I didn't want us to be alone. I only had to go upstairs, cross a small corridor and go downstairs again on the other wing to reach the classroom. I would be back in less than 5 minutes. Besides, there were still students coming and going. It wasn't as if the corridor and stairs were empty. So I turned my back to Monty and left without a word. Okay, the second stairs were emptier than I had anticipated, but I looked around carefully all the time, not wanting a repeat of that damned fall. Our corridor, I thought, was as lonely as a desert. Well, at least I saw in the semi-darkness that the classroom doors were open, since they still had to be cleaned. I stepped inside, grabbed my dictionary and went back to the corridor in less than 30 seconds. Proud of myself, I started walking towards the stairs again, until I felt two huge, callous hands gripping my neck from behind. My heart skipped a beat. That couldn't happen. Not again. Not right then. Help! Please, help me! One of the hands wrapped around the lower side of my jaw and squeezed. I felt like halting, but the man was applying too much force to even allow that. I turned, trying to shake him off. He wasn't wearing any mask, and although I couldn't see his features very well in the gloom, I was certain I had seen that face before. He was the man with the cuts in his hands, the one in the poker game who was working on the roof with Andrew. His name unloaded my mind right then, but that wasn't very important when the man was straining me with all his might. I stepped on his foot, applying my whole weight, but his fraction was pushing me against the wall, hitting the back of my head against the hard surface. That made my consciousness crumble during the moments. I tried to shake my head to regain my senses, but they sent a painful ring through my brain. Panicking, I tried to kick his parts with no success, and then punch him wherever I could reach. The sound of hurried steps echoed the empty corridor. I could have cried with relief when I recognized the silhouette on the other side of the corridor, Monty. He must have followed me. But then, before my attacker could react, Monty turned away and left again. What? Was he going to look for reinforcement? It must be that, but they could arrive too late since the man redoubled his force around my neck. And Monty's defiant expression when he saw us was engraved in my mind. No reaction at all. Was it that he didn't want to save me? He fought the man back again with all my might while my tears were starting to blind me. That couldn't be true. Monty wouldn't do that, right? Did he hate me that much now? A sudden push made me trip over my feet and fall to the ground with the grace of a potato sack with the man's weight on top of me. It was difficult to see what exactly was happening, but struggling noises that came from above told me someone was trying to tear me off my neck. Monty was back. I felt almost ashamed of having doubted him as relief watched over me. With the man busy fighting the presents on his back and the pressure around my throat reduced, it was almost easy to put my feet up against his torso and pushed him off. Monty and I climbed on top of the duck and succeeded in immobilizing him. "Stay still! You're not going anywhere!" I caught and regained my breath again while holding down the man. Monty slipped his tie around his neck and used to tie together the criminal's wrist. "Give me yours too! I'll bind his feet so he can't escape. You have some explanation to do." The man laughed bitterly while he constrained his movements completely. "That won't happen, lad." No? Alex's father here is a lawyer, so you have messed with the wrong person." He grunted, pulling a face, and said no more. Monty and I shared a long look. My throat hurt, but I was able to breathe normally again. I reached for Monty's shoulder, but he moved away. "Monty, thank you very much." My voice came out raspy, and my throat felt raw and dry, but I was alive, and that was the important thing, and it was all thanks to Monty again. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. We checked the bindings and stood up. "You have saved my life again." "You're welcome. You should go and fetch the head teacher and some footmen while I keep an eye on him, don't you think?" "Yes, of course." But before leaving, I hesitated for a moment. "Monty..." His eyes were lost in the shadows. "You weren't going to save me, right? At first?" "It was only during a heartbeat. Sorry, I came back, didn't I?" I opened my mouth, but I couldn't find anything to reply. I shook my head and left. The next days were hectic. The head teacher phoned my father, and then they proceeded to shut themselves inside his office for hours. The police came and took the man, Martin, to the village, and some hours later he was carried to Lincoln, the nearest big town where he was going to be prosecuted. The other 4 new servants were arrested as well, although they never found that Mark boy who vanished from the school. The head teacher asked my friend and I to be discreet about what had happened to avoid running the school's reputation, and we rolled our eyes but agreed. So, apart from my parents, any other family was notified of the events, and the police presence was explained with a fake pretext. My father, in turn, promised me he would take on everything related to my attacks. He was rather annoyed with my lack of communication and couldn't understand why I hadn't told him before what was happening. When I tried to justify myself, he just shook his head and asked me to focus on my studies from then on and forget that unfortunate issue. He didn't allow me to attend the trial, but my mother and him visited me at the school when it finished before going back to our home village. My mother hugged me tightly, and her eyes were wet, and my father's mouth was a white tight line. "Mom? Dad? Did the man talk? Do we know who's behind my attack?" My father chewed his pipe with a surface. "I'm sorry, Alex, but I think you're not ready yet to face that kind of information." "What?" My mother sobbed still louder. We were strolling through the front garden of the school. "I promise we will tell you everything one day, just not now." "But that's unfair. Why?" My father's pained face made me bite my tongue. "It's a rather unpleasant topic that will have to be discussed properly one day, and I swear we will have that conversation when you turn 18 and are more mature, for example." "But I'm not a kid anymore. I'm grown up and responsible, Dad." He sighed and tousled my hair. "I know, you have grown up too quickly, Alex, but you're not as mature as you think. You should have told us adults as soon as they started and not put your life in the line restlessly, and you know that." I looked aside, a bit embarrassed. "Perhaps. So, please forget about this and study hard for your exams, will you? Do it for your mother and me." I was being treated as a child, defeated, I assured them. I would study and make them proud of me. Of course. What else could I do? I still had goosebumps all over every time my eyes went to the part of the corridor where that man had me almost murdered. As time went by, Monty and I started to have a rather nice relationship again, made up more of fellowship than truly friendship, but it was okay. We still avoided being alone with each other, not Now that there wasn't any threat against me, I didn't need to be with someone all the time, so it was fine. I kept studying hard with Rick and occasionally hanging out with Damien and his mates. All in all, it was a great year, and I will always consider my time in St. Michael's a unique experience. I succeeded in entering Oxford. Rick went finally to Cambridge, and I never knew that university Monty attended in the end, but I met Damien sometimes, although we weren't close and had a different circle of friends. The only regret I still have, even after so many years, comes when I remember those barely 2 months with Monty. Once I stopped feeling heartbroken and disappointed, once the shock about Monty's reaction during the last attack faded away, I started to remember only the good things about him. His kindness, his contagious laugh, his pale, lovely skin, that afternoon at the school bathroom, and I keep daydreaming about the freckled 16-year-old boy and the relationship that could have been but never was. Oh Mann! Bad relationship ends. Warum habe ich eigentlich das Glück, dass über Bad Relationship? Ach, Kacke. Na gut, wir haben ja gespeichert. Wir machen das Ganze einfach nochmal. Dann. Okay. Ja, the end. Schade. Aber komm, ich kann doch da nicht immer wieder nachgeben, wenn der ständig mit seiner dummen Eifersucht kommt. Ach. Mann. Aber wir versuchen es einfach nochmal, würde ich sagen. Vielleicht kriegen wir mal ein positives Ende. Aber immerhin haben wir jetzt überlebt. Wir waren immerhin nicht tot. Das ist schon mal ein positiver Ausgang der Geschichte. Na gut. Ich würde sagen, wir sehen uns einfach in der nächsten Folge wieder. Und versuchen vielleicht das gute Ende mit Monty rauszufinden, indem wir den nochmal nachgeben. Ja, thanks for playing. Bitteschön. Das Spiel ist eigentlich echt schön. Also ich mag es echt gern. Und ja, ich würde sagen, wir sehen uns einfach in der nächsten Folge wieder und versuchen dann ein gutes Ende hervorzuholen, das vielleicht mit einer funktionierenden Partnerschaft endet und nicht immer Bad Relationship. Okay, dann bis zum nächsten Mal. Auf Wiedersehen.